Welcome to the Arkstream. This is Vox Day, Streamlabs All-Star, and I want to thank Streamlabs for honoring us with that particular distinction. I have to admit, I'm still really just learning how to use this particular option, or this particular software. But it is something I'm happy to use. It works for me, and I'm still exploring it. So now that I've got all-star status, I'm actually looking forward to having a conversation with some of the tech support staff so I can really figure out what I'm doing here. So how Arkhaven is going to shake up the comics industry. We've been talking about this a fair amount today on the blog, and this was really sparked by discussion of someone saying, well, you know, what the right wing needs to do is we need to band together. You know, all the creators need to team up, you know, to create a new Marvel. But the problem is creators teaming up is not creating a Marvel. Creators teaming up is creating a new Image Comics. And that's not going to work because Image Comics has not been successful overall as an organization. It's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is threefold as far as I can tell. Number one, people on the right are pretty individualistic. They have a tendency to want to pursue what is of maximum interest and value to them at the moment. They don't tend to think in terms of either building organizations and institutions, and they definitely don't think in terms of taking over existing organizations and institutions and modifying them to their liking. So that's the first reason. And if you look at what is happening already, look at what has happened since we launched the Alt Hero campaign and set off this whole comics Kickstarter thing. If you look at what has happened, the guy from Diversity in Comics has had a lot of success. Ethan Van Sciver has had a tremendous amount of success. You've got folks like Tim Lin and Chuck Dixon doing the Trump Space Force. You've got Will Callaghan has been doing some other stuff. John Della Rose has done Flying Sparks. He's got another bigger project in the works. Now, if these people were all thinking in terms of institutions and structure, then they would all be working with Arkhaven or Dark Legion. But most of them aren't. You know, some of them are. You know, we're going to be publishing John Della Rose's stuff at retail. We're going to be publishing Will Callaghan stuff. But everyone else wants to do their own thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Please understand, I am not criticizing anyone here. But what is going to happen is the same thing that has happened in the world of independent publishing, which is that you're going to have a few really big winners, and they're going to do very well, and almost everyone else is going to pretty much go by the wayside and be unable to really do anything at all. And in comics, it's just that more difficult because it's a lot easier to just write a book and put out an ebook than it is to put together the various moving pieces that involve the writing, the illustrating, the coloring, the publishing, the selling. You know, there are people who can do all that. Ethan Van Sciver is very clearly one of them. But you're not going to be able to build a publishing company off of that. we've already seen this in the world of independent publishing. Castalia House was supposed to publish Milo's Dangerous. 4 times we were told, yeah, we want you to publish this. But then they got all excited about the fact that it was the #1 Amazon bestseller, even in pre-order and all that sort of thing. And so they thought, well, we'll start a publishing house. The problem is that a publishing house involves a considerable amount of infrastructure and a lot of strategic relationships and that sort of thing. What most people don't understand is that we had this infrastructure assembled since 2014. We did the Alt Hero Kickstarter in October 2017. So we already had everything in place. The Kickstarter was just the thing that allowed us to take that to the market. But we already had all the infrastructure there. And it's also very different publishing other people's stuff than just doing your own. And so, now I'm not saying that people are not going to be successful. Quite to the contrary, people are going to be very successful, just not most of them. It's just like, if you look at independent publishing, you look at how well people like Nick Cole and Jason Anspach are doing with Galaxy's Edge. You look at how well people like Richard Fox are doing with the Ember War. But that is 1/10 of 1/10 of 1% of all the people who are attempting to play there. And the Amazon marketplace only exacerbates that win big. If you're lucky, most of you lose. And so the second reason, is that most illustrators can't write. We had this discussion when we first started Arkhaven, and I told people not to worry about the art. We had the writing, we had the stories, we had the characters. The art we were going to improve. And people have already seen how we are improving the art. And yet, those first issues are still selling very well. Why? Because it's the stories that matter. The art is great. The art attracts a lot of attention. I'm not denigrating the art. I'm simply saying that is one part of the puzzle. It's one ingredient in the cake, and it's not the most important one. It's just the most obvious one. And so I think that there might be a way for us to add some value at Dark Legion by putting together writers and illustrators and bringing them together to start working on a new IP, new created IP that Dark Legion could publish. Now I just started thinking about this today. I haven't really figured out exactly how the model is going to work. There's always the problem because the artist has to do more work. It takes him more time. But the story created by the writer is actually more important in the long run. So how do you balance that? What's a fair division of labor there, and so forth? I don't know. Maybe some of you will have ideas if you're at all involved in that sort of thing. And then the third problem is that you have to be willing to follow the leader. You don't have to like the leader. You don't have to agree with everything they do. Do you really think that everybody who joneses to get published by Marvel agrees with everything that Marvel's editor-in-chief thinks? Of course not. They probably don't even know. Uh-oh. Speak of the devil. Ethan's here. We were just talking about you, man. Yeah, he's gonna be the one to blame. You know, he's the one sucking up all the oxygen in the space. But seriously, the problem is that, you know, the infrastructure is going to be there, and so, you know, you need to take advantage of it. You need to work with it, and so, you know, and that's going to be the key. Now, we're going to be happy to support these other right-wing efforts. We're happy to support Comicsgate. I'm happy to support Cyberfrog and all of our other allies, just as we have done in the world of independent publishing with Castalia House. But here's the reality, is that in order to negotiate, in order to have a place at the table with the other big boys, you need somebody to be a big boy themselves. I was just talking about this earlier on the blog. Imagine if, instead of Milo doing his thing, instead of Cernovich doing his thing, instead of Nick and Jason doing their thing, imagine that we had all worked out a deal where, you know, they were publishing with Castalia House, and we had the ability to negotiate directly with Podium and with Audible, with Amazon, and that sort of thing. I suspect that we would all be in a significantly better position, because then we would have the ability to deal directly with the large organizations. And so that didn't happen. That's probably not going to happen in comics either, because we on the right tend to be too naturally individualistic. And that's okay. Again, I'm not complaining. I'm just analyzing the situation and trying to figure out how we can avoid the mistakes that were made in independent publishing and maximize on the opportunities that Marvel and DC are creating for us by their absolute refusal to meet the needs of the comics buying public. The reason that we didn't publish Milo's book was because he was betrayed by his literary agent, who, instead of simply doing his job and getting the deal done, what he did was use us as the backup plan and went running around in order to set up his own publishing house. Of course, that failed so completely that Dangerous Books was gone before even 1 year had passed. Now think about that. This is the #1 selling book in the world, and that's not enough to, you know, build a publishing structure on top of. And so when you look at the additional complications that you have in the comics world with, you know, Diamond's got their monopoly. They take 22 cents out of every retail dollar. That's why the comic stores are dying. Diamond is sucking all the oxygen, all the profit out of the industry. You know, they're not taking it away from Marvel. They're not taking it away from DC. They're taking it away from the comic stores. And so, you know, everybody's desperately trying to hang on. They're not going to be able to. Most of them are not going to be able to. That's why, you know, we've set up Arkhaven / Castalia Direct, and that's why we're working with Ingram instead. Which brings me to the next point. We are about, and this is where we've talked about how Arkhaven is shaking up the comics industry. I just got off the phone today with the folks in the UK. Next week, we are launching a major mailing campaign. They're sending 4 Arkhaven comics to every single comic store in the UK. It's also an invitation to set up each of these comic stores with Ingram. So it's not just about selling Arkhaven comics. It's about giving them access to Ingram's massive library of graphic novels. I checked it out, and of the 500 best-selling graphic novels on Comicron, Ingram carries 498 of them. They don't carry any of the single-issue comics. That's Diamond's monopoly. But they carry all of the graphic novels. And more importantly, they have better prices, better discounts. They have much better payment terms. They have much better stock. And so it is honestly in the interest of every single comic store to sign up with Ingram. And as a bonus, they can also then carry Arkhaven and Dark Legion comics, which they couldn't do without working with Ingram. So what I'm interested in doing is, if you happen to be in the UK and you happen to be interested in supporting this, shoot me an email, voxday@gmail.com. Just put Arkhaven UK in the title, and we're putting together a team of operatives who are going to follow up on the Ingram mailing to all those stores. Ingram will have people following up too, but we want people who are enthusiastic about Arkhaven specifically. And so also, here's the other thing, because most of you are obviously not from the UK, we're going to be doing the same thing in the United States as well. The reason that we're not doing it quite as soon is because hundreds of Chuck Dixon's Avalon #1 comics have just been sent to Chuck Dixon. He's going to be signing them all, sending them back to Ingram, and then they're going to be sending them out to all the comic stores. And so I'm not asking you to volunteer yet for the US because it's too soon, but I will make a public call both on the blog and on the Arkstream for when that time comes. So, we're going to seriously change the way that the comics industry works. And this is not the end of it. This is just the beginning. We have other things going on with our partners. We have a lot of other plans in mind, and this is just the beginning. What you have seen is just the first few steps in Arkhaven and our allies in Comicsgate taking the industry away from the SJWs at Marvel and DC. That's the goal. That's the objective. It's a long march, but we're enthusiastic. We're having a good time. We're happy warriors, and just tune into Ethan's channel. He's clearly having a great time. I doubt he has had that much fun at DC the entire time he was there. He'd have to speak for himself. Do you expect Antifa to show up and assault any comic book store owners that try to sell your comics? No, I don't, because it's very clear that the strategy that the left has taken is to try to ignore it. They may try to do something down the road, but not right away. The strategy is clearly shut up, don't talk about it, pretend it doesn't exist, hope it goes away. Let's see. Vox could gain more subs if he runs over more Star Wars toys with his car. That's the secret to success. Hey, Ethan, I don't know if you caught this, but I am now a Streamlabs All-Star. I think that that probably doesn't qualify for making me bigger than you yet, but let's face it, it's a big step forward. I even got a logo. What are your thoughts on digital versus comic sales? Marvel has for years defended their SJW comics by saying they have strong digital sales but refuse to release sales numbers. It's pretty much bullshit. We have strong digital sales too, and they are profitable, but they're not. I don't think that they can possibly make up for the continuing decline of the print sales. Do you believe Western European countries will create nationalist military pacts like V4 in the near future? Yes, although that's pacts, P-A-C-T-S. I believe that they will. Oh no, Vox tasted the Streamlabs fruit. I have no idea. How come SJWs always ignore you but attack Milo and Cerno? Well, there's two reasons. Milo and Cerno are much more influential than I am. You know, so they get a lot more attention. They're also much more public figures than I am. Also, and you know, this is what both Milo and Cerno himself have said. You know, I'm a little too intelligent for them to come at directly. It's very, very difficult for them to even find something to complain about me. If you notice, whenever they quote me, on the very rare occasions they do, it's almost always a fragment of a sentence. Now, I've actually seen SJWs complain that I am too slippery, and that whenever I say something, I always have a sufficient degree of plausible deniability and so forth. And it's not that I'm being slippery, it's that I'm being precise. And they can't take on the specific thought that I have articulated, so they're forced to try to claim that there's an implication and so forth, and that's just not very effective. Also, if you think about it, both Milo and Cerno are considerably more, I guess you would say, chaotic. No, that's not really the word I'm looking for. Both of them are more into shocking people. And so they're much more likely to say something that is legitimately controversial and that can then be twisted and used against them in some way. Mike's been a lot more careful, a lot better about that recently. But yeah, as the commenter noticed, it is a bit odd that precision and clarity is being described as slippery. Yeah. It's not slippery, they just can't lay a hand on it. Have you talked to Jeremy from the Cord Ring? No, I have never heard of Jeremy or the Cord Ring. He says it's a YouTube channel that routinely covers Comicsgate. He might be able to get the word out about Arkhaven Comics. Hey, I'll be more than happy to talk to him. Shoot him an email. Let him know that we'd be happy to send him some review copies, or send him some digital copies. We're just starting to get the word out. The email campaign, or not the email campaign, but the mailing campaign only begins later this week. So, did you see that New York Times article about New Hampshire? Yeah, I'm not really interested in talking about that. It's the same frickin' subject all the frickin' time. How do we play big in the West-friendly infrastructure? Make more infrastructure. Yes, we need to build it up. We need to big it up. We do not need an alphabet core. Unable to download Dixon's Avalon to iPhone. Kindle says not available in that format. All you need to do is convert it in Calibre from Mobi to EPUB. All of our stuff is unlocked, or is not digital protected. Let's see. All right, well, that's all I have for tonight, other than to say Soda Pop Soldier is now not only available on Amazon, but it is also available in print. I will have the link up on the blog soon. Quantum Mortis, we have a new Quantum Mortis comic coming out very soon, as well as the 3 War Dogs Inc. novels are now out. We're actually talking to Podium about possibly doing the audio through them, so that could be interesting. And finally, if you're interested in what Arkhaven is doing, if you want to support what Arkhaven is doing, if this is new to you, we have now we have 10 comics in print already. We have even more than that in digital. We just released Rebel Dead Revenge #3, and if you're into Civil War, zombies, The Walking Dead, then and an undead Confederate army, I'd recommend checking it out. It's pretty wild. So, Vox, your streams are too short. We want more. Actually, I've been told that I should make them even shorter because of the YouTube algorithms. But I think that I completely failed to do that. If I look at the time here, you're supposed to keep it to 15 minutes or so, and we're at 26. So much for that. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it, and we will look forward to seeing you the next time. Have a good evening.